Alright, so here's kind of a mind map about forgiveness. So I see forgiveness as a way of letting go of the emotional burden and attachment to the person who hurt you. And from my perspective, there are two things that make this really tough. First, the fact that the person who hurt us often doesn't even realize what they did. That can leave us feeling frustrated or even crazy when we try to explain. Second, there's this inner push for justice, for claiming back the rights that were taken away. So it's very understandable if forgiveness feels hard, because when we look at it from the angle of justice and fairness, all those emotional barriers like anger, sadness keep showing up. Now, there are four big stages in the process. First, being aware of the problems that are still there. Second, trying to understand by identifying the patterns and tendencies that shape us from our environment. Third, seeing opportunities to change once we've understood the issues. And finally, reaching forgiveness. And honestly, throughout these stages, our emotions can really get drained. So I think it's natural or even important to lean on emotional coping strategies like creating some distance, journaling, and so on. As long as we remember that these strategies are not for escaping or forgetting the problem, but to strengthen ourselves so we can come back and face it again. In this book, this whole thing is broken down into 6 practical steps of forgiveness. It starts with recognizing the injury, which means no more making excuses or denying what happened. We need to objectively list out the wrongs done to us. Then identifying the emotions tied to them, like fear, shame, guilt, or anger. Next is to grieve what we lost or what was taken, maybe by writing a letter or even just imagining ourselves saying the words to the person involved. After that comes setting boundaries, which I personally think is the hardest, especially if we grew up in environments where boundaries were often ignored or violated. It takes courage to build those fences, and like a real fence, it doesn't mean cutting people off completely. It just means interacting with limits that protect us while raising our own priorities. The fifth stage is forgiving by canceling the debt. And the final step is deciding whether reconciliation is possible. What I love about this is how the book emphasizes that we can forgive without reconciliation, but we cannot reconcile without forgiving first. Because forgiveness is unilateral, it only takes one person, while reconciliation needs two. Of course, the benefits of forgiveness are clear. It frees us from emotional burden. And I think it's actually a form of self-compassion because we are choosing ourselves as a priority. Forgiveness also breaks the cycle of revenge so we can redirect that energy into something more positive. And honestly, I also see forgiveness as a weapon we can always rely on when facing future feelings in life. Because if we've managed to overcome one of the toughest battles before, we know we can do it again. So the key points are forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. The power is in our hands because forgiveness is our choice. And we can even do it silently, just between us and ourselves. Random analogy here, but it's like two safety pins that are locked together. If the other person refuses to unlock, we can still choose to unlock ourselves. And last but not least, if you're a believer, don't forget the role of faith in this process. Forgiving flows from the fact that we ourselves have been forgiven by God. Forgiveness is hard, so we need the help of the Holy Spirit. And by forgiving, we also reflect Jesus, who showed us what forgiveness looks like in the most real way possible.